everyone, my name's Andy, welcome back to another FPL video, and today we're taking a look at Harry Kane. £11 million this year. Usually in seasons gone past, if he was 11 million, he'd be the first name on our team sheets, but this year maybe not so much for a lot of you. And I wanted to take a look at him myself to see if I could persuade myself to put him in, whether he's a better option than the likes of Sterling, Salah and Aguero and players like that. So going to take a look into the numbers and the fixtures and stuff like that and other things to consider. But just to remind ourselves how good he's been, obviously last year was a little bit of a blip by his standards, 160 points, but before that he's averaged around 200 points, so 217, 224, 211 and 191. So ever since he's burst on the scene, he's been an incredible point scorer over the course of the season. So we're going to take a look into this today. I'm going to turn the face cam off for a lot of this because there's a lot of numbers to go through, as you'll see on screen. So I'm going to go through and explain them and give you my thoughts at the end. So I hope you enjoy it. So for the purposes of this video, I basically compared any premium player that's £11 million plus. There's 6 in all. Kane, obviously, the point of this video, and then comparing him to Salah, Mane, Sterling, Aguero and Aubameyang. And like I said, Kane's worst season was last year, 160 points. That's the worst since he basically burst onto the scene. And one of the reasons for that was a lack of minutes. Usually he hits around the 3,000 mark, but last year he was 24, 23. Which is actually the lowest out of all the players we're comparing. So total minutes and total points and that aren't necessarily the be-all and end-all. Obviously, it's important to remember that you've got transfers throughout the season. You don't have to keep a player for the whole year. And that's basically why I've shown minutes per point, which on screen is shown as MPP. So this is how many minutes they have to play until they scored a point during that season. So obviously, if you've got a player with a very low minutes per point, but not an overall good amount of points, then it's worth having them when they're fitting in the team. But obviously, you've got to remember that you might have to use a transfer on them later in the season. So as you can see, even for this, Kane is the worst. So even though he had a reduced lack of minutes, he still scored the worst points per minute out of all of them. If you compare him to Aguero, there was only a total of 34 extra minutes for Aguero across the entire season, yet he scored 4 more goals and 5 more assists. Most of the time when we look at strikers, you probably don't really think about assists too much. They're there to score goals. But ultimately in FPL, you want all the points you can get. And Kane generally is not great for racking up a good amount of assists compared to the goals he has. So I think 7's the most he's had in a single season. Along with Sterling, he was also bottom for goals last year. But obviously worth noting that Sterling gets an extra point for a goal, as well as points for clean sheet, which Man City get a lot of, and he got 9 assists, meaning that he earned a point every 11.8 minutes, which was actually the best last season, so even better than Salah did. So if he'd played more minutes, he would have probably outscored Salah last season, so he looks a great asset. Aubameyang's an interesting one. He's a frustrating at times, especially last season, because he had a few small injuries and was kind of in and out of the team. And obviously he did get rotated with Lacazette. Sometimes he played with him, but often he'd start on the bench. And Lacazette the same. He wasn't always in the team. But he actually came away with the points per minute along the same as Mane. And obviously we know how good Mane did last year. Scored the same amount of goals but got more assists in less minutes. So if there was ever a possibility of Aubameyang being the #1 striker, potentially for Lacazette being injured or something like that, then he looks like a really great pick. He's always going to score points, good for assists and goals. And even with a lack of minutes, he looks really good. So especially if he's going to be in the team as a kind of, if Lacazette's injured or whatever, then I'd definitely look at Aubameyang, and he's the same price as Kane as well. One of the things that stands out here for me is both of the Man City players scored points at a quicker rate than the rest. So Aguero with 12.22 and Sterling with 11.8. So obviously they don't get as many minutes. They've got to be rotated because Pep's basically got the squad to do that. But they both beat Salah, which is pretty impressive. So the more they play, the more points they're going to get, of course. So you've got to take this into account when looking at someone like Kane. Obviously, it's all well and good that Sterling and Aguero do score at a quicker rate, but if you're going to get rotated, then you are going to score less points across the season. So if you're thinking about having these players in for a long time, then with Kane, although he doesn't necessarily score as quick, you know he's going to start every match that he's fit for. So that's a really big plus when he owns him. So don't discount or don't just look at minutes point per match. You've also got to look at the fact that Kane will play every game when he's fit, and on penalties and stuff like that as well. So he looks like a really good option. So given that last year, the 2018-19 season was Kane's worst, I also wanted to give him a bit of a comparison for the previous season when he scored 29 goals, which is obviously very impressive. That was in 2017-18. But as you can see, as great as he did, he still only beat Mane when it came to points per minute. For the most part, you would have been better off owning Aguero in that season for when he played. Versus Kane. Now, obviously, again, like I've already said, you've got to take into the fact if Aguero's in and out of the team through injuries or Jesus is playing, and that is a pain. You're obviously not getting points for that, and Kane will keep playing. But when Aguero's fit and raring to go, as he's shown over the last 2 seasons, he will usually score quicker than Kane. Salah had a bit of a freak season. I'm not sure we'll see that again anytime soon. 9.6 minutes per point. But as you can still see from when we compared last season, he still scored a really impressive amount of points and loads of chances created, loads of assists and loads of goals as well. So even though he may not score 300 points, he's still scoring really quickly whenever he plays. The other thing I've noted here, a couple of things, is Aubameyang again scored at a really quick rate, and considering he's the same price as Kane, that's definitely one to keep an eye on when Arsenal have got a good run of fixtures, especially if Lacazette's out of the team and then Aubameyang's basically nailed on. And Sterling also scored consistently well that year again, 11.3 minutes per point. So over the last 2 seasons, he's been really consistent with his goals and assists. And obviously he's really important to the way that Pep plays. So he's racking up the goals and assists. You're going to see rotation with him, but as long as it's not too often, like I said, he still clocked up 2,500 minutes in that season. So it's still a really good score overall. So yeah, either way, it's really clear that Kane is obviously capable of scoring goals. I don't think anyone doubts that. But like I said, again, the assists are low, only 2 assists. So when it comes to total contributions, so goals and assists, he doesn't get that far ahead, even if he does score that many goals. And for a striker, an assist is only worth 1 point less. So, even Aubameyang in that season doubled the amount of assists in a third less minutes. So it's definitely not one of Kane's strong points, assists. And they do add up when you get a striker that can get them as well as his goals. And just a quick note on Mane, obviously his season was obviously nowhere near as good as the one just gone. He only scored 10 goals, but creativity was much better. And minutes per point was not that far up behind Kane. It just shows that midfielders, because of the extra ways they've got to score points, obviously extra for a goal, extra for a clean sheet, it does add up over time. So as a lot of people have already noticed, Kane's got a really great start to the season, kicks off against Aston Villa at home. And it's always difficult to know how newly promoted teams will adapt to the Premier League, whether they'll try and be more defensive or not. But my instinct is usually just to target them and see how they do. Obviously, if it's like Wolves last year and suddenly they do really good, and then we can reassess how many players we want to play against them or whether we captain players against that side. But as a general rule, especially at the start of the season, I'm happy to target them. And Villa conceded 61 goals last year, which is the most from any of the promoted sides. So currently there's not really anything to say that's going to be massively improved. So it does look like a good fixture for Kane in game week 1. When it comes to highlighting the kind of green, orange and red for this, I kept it pretty simple without looking into too much of the past fixtures. So green's for any home matches outside of the top 6. Orange is a home match against the top 6 or an away game against a non-promoted side. And then red if it's top 6 away. So I just kept it nice and simple. So from this you can see that Kane has 3 green fixtures, all home games, pretty decent. Newcastle and Palace are teams I wouldn't necessarily like to target in the past, but obviously Newcastle have lost Rafa and they're going to have to get in a new manager, and Palace have lost Wan-Bissaka, so there's a good chance that Kane could do well in these fixtures. My main concern with the opening 6 are the away games. So they've got Arsenal and City, red fixtures, they're going to be really tough. Maybe Arsenal could be okay depending on what kind of squad additions they get, but it's not really a team that I want to captain Kane for. And then outside of that, they've got Leicester, which is arguably going to be one of the toughest games outside of the top 6. They're making some good purchases. We'll have to see whether they can keep Harry Maguire. That could be a concern. But ultimately, I think that's going to be a tough fixture. So aside from that, you've also got to consider when you'd be happy captaining Kane versus a Man City or a Liverpool player. So while it's worth remembering that Kane has got Villa at home, obviously Liverpool got Norwich at home. So it's not Kane versus the rest. It's a combination. If you're just going to have 2 premium players, it's like Sterling and Salah, or Sterling and Kane, or Salah and Kane. So there's different ways you could go about getting these 2 premium players. So like I said, he's got Villa at home in game week 1. Liverpool have got Norwich. And with Liverpool being so good attacking, if there's no, if it doesn't look like they're going to be rested, kind of Salah and Mane because of the African Cup of Nations, then I think you'd struggle to back against them to get a big haul. And then Newcastle at home is Kane's next captainable game. But then you've got Man City playing Bournemouth away. So for the Palace game, Liverpool got Newcastle, Man City have got Norwich. So there's always a counter to Spurs' fixtures. Yes, they're good, but the other 2 players you'll probably be looking at, Salah, Sterling, Aguero, maybe even Mane, have also got good fixtures as well. So while the Villa game is a big pull for me, I'm not sure it's the be-all and end-all when you look at the whole picture for the opening games. And it's also worth noting, if you really wanted a Spurs player for that, with Son being suspended, you could look towards someone like Lucas Moura. So you probably wouldn't captain him necessarily, but if there is going to be a big haul there, he could get it just as well as anyone else. And you can use your Liverpool captain instead for game week 1. So outside of kind of fixtures and past performances, there's obviously other things to consider as well. There's more that goes into FPL than just numbers. Now the stadium's in place, Spurs look like they're starting and being ready to do business. They've already signed Ndombele. That's going to be a massive improvement last year, and there's rumours that they're going to bring in more midfielders as well. So given they've already got a really good attack, Ali Eriksen, we'll have to see if Eriksen stays. There's rumours of him going. Kane, Son and Mora, they look pretty good, and with someone more defensively minded like Ndombele, we could see the attackers given more license to kind of go forward, maybe not have to drop as deep, and that could obviously help Spurs score some more goals this year, and obviously if they bring in more players, that could really help too. And outside of the Nations League, Kane's getting a summer off. There's no World Cup this year. Obviously, he's had a couple of bad injuries as well in the last few seasons, and everyone that watches him has said he's needed a rest for a while. So given that he's kind of averaged 200 points nearly for the past few seasons without getting a proper break, and having a few bad injuries, it'd be really interesting to see what he can do this year. And it's going to be hard to back against him, I think. Other things to note, Sterling and Salah, like I've already mentioned, have been really consistent over the last few seasons. Again, like saying it's hard to back against Kane, it's very difficult to back against them. And they are in two teams that we know will attack, and score loads of goals. So the biggest pull for me, I suppose, over Kane for someone like Sterling is he's guaranteed to play. Yes, there's this thing about African Cup of Nations at the start of the season for Salah, but the chances of him missing more than one game is very unlikely. As we've seen from the last few seasons, you need a lot of points to beat Man City, and you can't be giving them up. So Salah plays most minutes, so does Mane when he's fit, and Kane absolutely does, but players like Sterling don't. So obviously that is a pull. And then obviously, because he got injured last year and he did miss a lot of games, he did miss quite a few easier fixtures. So I've written them down here. He missed Fulham, Watford, Newcastle, Huddersfield, Brighton, West Ham, Bournemouth, and Everton as well. So potentially there was a lot of room there for him to get some more points. If he'd played in those easier fixtures, he did play a lot of the top 6 teams last year. So again, maybe take that points per minute into account there, that he didn't necessarily play all the good teams. So what's my verdict? I created this video to basically let myself do some research, because I just look at Kane for 11 million and think I need to get him into my team. The problem I've got is, like I've said, Salah and Sterling are so consistent, I don't think I can go without them. And when I look at captaincy, I feel like those two are the best combo, better than Kane and Sterling and better than Kane and Salah. I did predict Kane to come in at 12 million, so seeing him for 1 million less makes him super tempting. But given I want Salah and Sterling and a really good defence, it's very hard to fit him in as well. So I can see Liverpool probably scoring more than Spurs in the first fixture. And to be fair, the beauty of this game is transfers, right? We don't have to keep players all season. That means I don't have to say, even if I'm saying no to Kane now in game week 1, it doesn't mean I have to say no for the whole season. I can get him in at some point. Maybe Salah or Sterling or Aguero get injured and I bring him in. But as it stands, I think I want Salah and Sterling too much. I'm not prepared to sacrifice my defence. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm not really sitting on the fence, I hope, with this. And I'm not going to get Kane, but I do think he's a good option. So maybe that is sitting on the fence a little bit. But let me know in the comments below. I'm sure you've got a lot of opinions on Kane. Who's having him in their team? Who's strongly considering him? Let me know in the comments. Leave a like if you've enjoyed this video. Much appreciated. Let's try and get to 1,000 likes again. And subscribe if you're new around here. Loads more videos coming before the start of the season, and hopefully we'll have a stream soon enough as well. Otherwise, I'll leave it there. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll catch you next time. Cheers. If you did enjoy this video, or you want to support the channel even further, then I do have a Patreon page set up, which you can find in the link in the description below. There's a few different tiers, which I won't go into too much here, but one of them gets you Slack access, so that's with all the other Patreons. We just chat about FPL in general. Chit chat, so that's open right now, being talked about over the summer, building teams and things like that. There's actually no charge for Patreon until August 1st. That's when the mini leagues start up in August. So if you just want to join up now and get invited to Slack and see how it is, and obviously if you don't like it, you can cancel. If not, you can just carry on. And the mini leagues reset every month, so even if you're having a bad season, there'll be a new mini league code every single month to try and get some winnings. So if you want to check that out, link in the description below, or send me a message, and hopefully I'll see you over there soon.